Get out. You'll mess up the seats. My husband screamed, kicked me out mid-labor, then drove away. My name's Victoria. My water broke in the passenger seat of our Honda Accord, and my husband looked me dead in the eye and said, "Get out. You'll mess up the seats." He left me there on the cold asphalt while his parents watched from the back seat and said nothing. They drove off to their weekend getaway. I went into labor alone on a Walmart parking lot. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came after, when they tried to take my baby. When they said I was unstable, unfit, when the people who abandoned me bleeding on concrete claimed they were the victims. So I did something they didn't expect. I let the world see what they did. Would you like to know what happened next? I didn't know then that everything I'd stayed silent about would one day explode in that parking lot in Denver. It started long before the day Marcus kicked me out of that car. Long before I was gasping for air on that pavement, soaked and shaking. It started with a phone call and a family in crisis. My younger sister Amber had called off her engagement 3 weeks before the wedding. "She's having second thoughts," my mother whispered like it was a disease we didn't name aloud. The invitations had gone out to 200 guests. The deposit on the Ritz-Carlton ballroom was non-refundable. And Marcus, well, he wasn't just Amber's fiancé. He was a solution to my mother's nightmare. "At least we need to protect the family's reputation," she told me that evening over dinner. "It's a simple ceremony. Everyone knows Marcus. It won't feel that different." I remember the way her hands trembled as she sliced peaches for the cobbler, her voice too controlled. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and desperation. "What are you saying, Mom?" "I'm saying this could be good for you, Victoria. You've always been the responsible one. You don't chase fairy tales like Amber. You handle situations." That was how I became a bride in someone else's love story. Marcus and I met for coffee the next day at Starbucks on 5th Avenue. He was polite, distant. Still wore the engagement ring Amber had chosen, a princess-cut diamond that caught the afternoon light. He didn't apologize. Didn't ask if I was okay with any of it. Just said, "Let's not make this harder than it has to be. It's already embarrassing enough for your family." I nodded because I was raised to keep peace, not ask questions, especially when the family name was on the line. 3 days later, I was at David's bridal with my mother, getting Amber's dress altered. It was a strapless mermaid gown, more glamorous than anything I'd ever worn. But no one asked what I liked. They just took it in at the waist, hemmed it up, and clipped the cathedral veil to my head like I was a mannequin in their window display. Amber never called. Not once. The backyard wedding felt like a performance where I'd forgotten my lines. The September sky was too bright, the folding chairs uneven on our parents' lawn, and the sound system crackled when Pastor Williams began the ceremony. Marcus stood like a statue in his navy suit, nodding only once as I walked toward him alone down the rose-petal aisle. My father claimed his back was acting up. "Too painful to stand that long," he said. I knew it was something else, shame, maybe, or the weight of what we were all pretending. No personal vows, no lingering kiss, no first dance. Just a rushed exchange of rings followed by a dinner of lukewarm chicken parmesan and grocery store wine. My mother pulled me aside before we cut the cake, her grip firm on my arm. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "You saved us all from disaster." No one toasted the bride. That night in the guest bedroom at Marcus's parents' house, our honeymoon suite, as his mother Linda had awkwardly joked, I sat on the edge of the bed in a dress that had never been mine and wondered how I became the answer to a problem I never caused. I didn't cry. Crying would have made it feel more real. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the dresser mirror, veil hanging loose, hair falling flat, and told myself this was an opportunity. Maybe Marcus and I could make something genuine out of this arrangement. Maybe if I was enough of a wife, he'd learn to see me as more than Amber's replacement. The next morning, Marcus made coffee without asking how I slept and left for his job at the accounting firm without saying goodbye. His mother offered me leftover wedding cake and asked when I planned to return to my teaching job. "No point wasting your education," she said with that smile that never reached her eyes. That was day one of my marriage. I spent it unpacking boxes in our rental duplex on Maple Street and calling the electric company to transfer the utilities. I told myself it was normal, that marriages began in all sorts of ways, that love could follow commitment if you gave it enough time and effort. But underneath all that hopeful thinking was a silence so heavy it filled every corner of that small house. Every dinner where he scrolled through his phone. Every conversation that ended before it began. Every night we lay side by side like strangers. Still, I believed I could build something real out of nothing. That patience and dedication were enough. I gave him everything I had, every home-cooked meal, every compromise, every swallowed question about Amber. And it never occurred to me, not once in those first months, that this silence would someday shatter into something violent and public. It didn't happen all at once, of course. That kind of break takes time to form, long, stretched-out moments where you tell yourself it's not that bad, where you brush off coldness as adjustment and silence as temporary. The first snow had fallen that December morning, thin flakes barely sticking to the sidewalks as if they too weren't sure they belonged. I stood in our kitchen, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of decaf, watching the sky through the window while trying to ignore the weight in my lower back. 8 months pregnant, and everything ached. Marcus came downstairs with his usual heaviness. He never moved quietly, always stomped like the floors owed him something. He didn't look at me, just reached for his travel mug and muttered, "You forgot to add sugar yesterday." "Sorry, I'll remember today," I said softly. "You always say that." He walked out without another word. I stood there for several minutes, letting the silence settle, then made his breakfast anyway. I knew he'd come back for it. He always did. Routines mattered to Marcus, even if they came wrapped in resentment. By the time he returned, scarf half-tied and irritation already written across his face, I had his eggs Benedict on the table. He didn't thank me. He never did. I spent the morning folding baby clothes on the couch, resting between loads as my body protested every movement. The kicks were stronger now, little jabs that made me catch my breath. I texted Dr. Rodriguez about the cramping intensity. She said to come in the next day if it continued. That afternoon, I dragged myself to King Soopers for groceries. Linda had called that morning announcing she was bringing her book club over for dinner. She hadn't asked if I was up for hosting, just stated it like fact. "Don't forget Margaret doesn't eat gluten, and please make that spinach artichoke dip everyone loves. Use the good cream cheese." No discussion about whether I could stand on my feet that long, just expectations layered in politeness. The checkout line stretched forever. I leaned on the cart, shifting weight to ease my hip pain. A teenage cashier smiled at my belly as I paid. "Almost there, huh?" she said cheerfully. "Yeah, I managed. Almost." When I got home, Linda was already in my kitchen, inspecting ingredients. "You bought frozen spinach," she said, holding the bag like it might contaminate her. "Fresh is so much better. I hope Margaret doesn't notice." I opened my mouth, then closed it. "I can run back out." She sighed dramatically. "No, it's fine. I just hope she doesn't think less of your cooking." Dinner went exactly as these things always did. Marcus stayed glued to his phone. Linda took credit for every compliment. I was asked twice about losing the baby weight quickly. "You're so petite, you won't want to keep those extra pounds." I smiled, nodded, cleared plates, and carried hot dishes with dish towels because the oven mitt drawer stuck and no one offered to help. At one point, I burned my wrist on the casserole dish. The skin turned red immediately. No one noticed. 3 days before my due date, Marcus walked into our kitchen and announced, "Pack a bag. We're going to my parents' cabin in Vale for the weekend." I was folding tiny onuses at the counter, sorting them by size and color and hope. I turned slowly, my back screaming after 30 minutes on my feet. "My due date is this week," I reminded him gently but firmly. "It's not safe to travel. I have a checkup tomorrow with Dr. Rodriguez." He grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, took a bite. "You're not sick, Victoria. You're pregnant. Women aren't made of glass." The conversation ended like most things with Marcus, without resolution. Just him walking away, keys jingling. By noon, I was in the passenger seat of our Honda, gripping a thermos of lukewarm chamomile tea, watching Denver's suburbs roll past. Linda had texted earlier, "Can't wait to see you both. Marcus says you're nesting beautifully." The drive was silent except for Marcus's turn signal and the radio playing soft rock. I shifted constantly, trying to get comfortable, but strange cramping had started deep in my abdomen. Not the usual Braxton Hicks contractions I'd grown accustomed to. This was different. Sharper. Deeper. I pressed a hand to my belly. The baby kicked once, twice, then pressure. Real pressure. "Marcus." He kept his eyes on I-70. "What now?" "I think my water just broke." A beat of silence. Then a long, frustrated sigh. You've got to be kidding me. I'm not. Without another word, he took the next exit, pulling into a strip mall parking lot, Walmart, Subway, a payday loan place. He parked but left the engine running. I turned toward him, confused and frightened. What are we doing? We need to get to Presbyterian Hospital. He looked at the passenger seat, then down at my lap where amniotic fluid was soaking through my maternity jeans onto his precious leather interior. You're leaking all over my seats. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could say anything, he unbuckled his seatbelt and got out. He walked around to my door and yanked it open. Get out. I blinked, stunned. What? You heard me. Get out. You're going to ruin the interior. Marcus, I can't walk. I need help getting. He reached in and shoved my leg with his foot. Don't make this a scene, Victoria. My legs gave out as I tried to pivot. The seat edge pressed into my spine. I gripped the doorframe with both hands as pain radiated through my abdomen and my vision blurred. Fluid ran down my thighs. Then he kicked my foot just hard enough to knock it off the floor mat. I slid out, hitting the asphalt knees first. My palms splayed out instinctively, catching some of the fall, but the impact sent shockwaves through my spine. I gasped, my entire body contracting. My knees scraped against cold, grimy concrete that smelled of motor oil and exhaust. Behind me, Marcus muttered something under his breath. The car door slammed. The engine revved. I watched our Honda's taillights disappear into traffic. He didn't look back. Neither did his parents, who had sat silent in the backseat through it all. I don't know how long I lay there on that Walmart parking lot, shivering on the asphalt. The Colorado sun was high but offered no warmth against the November wind. Everything felt sharp and surreal, the smell of exhaust, the sound of shopping carts rattling, the taste of fear in my mouth. I tried to reach for my phone, which had fallen from my coat pocket during the fall. It sat just inches beyond my fingertips. My hands were swollen, stiff from cold and shock. I clawed forward across the rough pavement, finally grabbing it and dialing 911 with the last clarity I had. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Victoria, I gasped. I'm pregnant, in labor. My husband just abandoned me in a parking lot. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. She kept me talking, asked if I could see any landmarks. I read the Walmart sign through tears. I didn't realize I was crying. Help is on the way, Victoria. Stay with me. Someone knelt beside me, a stranger with kind eyes and a purple scarf. Are you okay? She pressed a gentle hand to my shoulder. I called 911 too. You're not alone. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics asked rapid-fire questions while lifting me onto a stretcher. How far along? When did contractions start? Any complications? I answered through gritted teeth as another wave of pain rolled through me. Inside the ambulance, wrapped in heated blankets, I stared at the ceiling while sirens wailed overhead. I wasn't crying anymore. Shock had wrapped around me like armor. I was floating above myself, watching this woman, this version of me, being carried away from a man who saw her as disposable. You're doing great, the paramedic said with a reassuring smile. Just hang in there. You're safe now. I closed my eyes and let those words wash over me. Let them break something open in my chest. He was right, I was safe now. And I would never be that woman again. The hospital room was sterile white and too quiet. My son lay in a clear bassinet beside me, swaddled tight, sleeping through the chaos of nurses and monitors. I hadn't slept much. Adrenaline from delivery had faded, replaced by soreness that lived in every inch of my body. But more than physical pain, my mind wouldn't stop racing. It kept circling around what had happened. Not just the parking lot, not just the ambulance, but everything before. All the small cuts that led to this deep wound. My parents arrived at sunrise. Mom carried grocery bags of snacks. Dad held gas station flowers with the price tag still attached. They looked older than I remembered, or maybe I just hadn't really looked in years. We came as soon as we could, Mom said, setting bags on the windowsill. Your brother needed the car or we would have been here sooner. They stayed 15 minutes. Long enough for Mom to comment on the baby's hair color. Long enough for Dad to mention needing to fix the garage door. Then they were gone, leaving behind the scent of guilt and awkward relief. It wasn't until after they left that my phone buzzed with the first message. Marcus, so now I'm the villain? I work my ass off and you play victim. I stared at it, unblinking. Not a word from him since he drove away and left me bleeding on asphalt. Another message, it's not my fault you couldn't handle the situation. You always make everything dramatic. Then another, I told my mom what really happened. She agrees you are acting unstable. That did it. Something that had been building inside me for months finally snapped. I opened the keyboard, thumbs hovering over the screen. The old Victoria would have deleted the draft, taken deep breaths, walked away. But that Victoria had been left on that parking lot 3 days ago. Say one more word like that and I'll respond in court, not text. I hit send without hesitation. By the time my lawyer Emma walked into my hospital room, it had been nearly 48 hours since I gave birth. I was exhausted, still sore, but focused in a way I hadn't been in years. My baby boy slept peacefully beside me, unaware of the storm building just outside these walls. Emma closed the door behind her and pulled out her tablet. No flowers, no pleasantries, just evidence. There's more than just your word now, she said, sitting beside my bed. She tapped the screen and turned it toward me. There's a security camera on the building across from that parking lot. The owner saw what happened, downloaded the footage, and sent it to a local news station. They forwarded it to me. I leaned forward carefully. The video played and within seconds I felt my chest tighten. There I was on screen, visibly in pain, hands gripping the car door as Marcus circled around with cold calculation. Then came the words I'd never forget. Get out. You're going to ruin the interior. And then the part one hadn't fully processed until now, the shove. The deliberate kick. The way I crumpled onto concrete while he drove away without a backward glance. Your parents need to see this, Emma said quietly. When they arrived an hour later, I didn't watch their faces during the playback. I kept my eyes on my sleeping son, one hand resting on his blanket. When it ended, the silence stretched like a held breath. I didn't know it was this bad, Mom whispered. I turned to her. You didn't want to know. She flinched like the words carried more weight than I'd intended. Maybe they did. Maybe they were years overdue. Dad stepped forward, eyes locked on Emma's tablet. He's not walking away from this, he said, voice low and steady. Not a chance in hell. Emma nodded. We'll file immediately. Assault, endangerment, emotional abuse. And his company will be receiving a copy. That night, alone with my baby, I received the first voicemail from Marcus. His voice shaky, trying to sound reasonable. Victoria, this is getting blown out of proportion. You know I didn't mean it like that. You were panicking, I panicked too. That video doesn't show everything. The next morning brought another, you're ruining my life. My job's on the line. You're making me look like a monster. Then a third, we should talk. Just us. No lawyers. We were good once, weren't we? I played them all for Emma that afternoon. She listened without flinching. Should I block him? I asked. No, she said. Let him keep digging his own grave. So I saved them all. Every desperate call, every attempt to rewrite history, every effort to gaslight me one last time. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Clarity. This wasn't revenge. It was restoration. The next morning, everything changed. Emma arrived with news that the video had gone viral overnight. #Justice for Victoria was trending. Major news outlets were running the story. Marcus's accounting firm had placed him on administrative leave pending investigation. He called you 4 times last night, Emma noted, scrolling through her phone. I think he's starting to understand the consequences. I looked at my son and felt something settle in my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was done hiding. 2 weeks after giving birth, I walked into Jefferson County Courthouse wearing a navy blouse that still smelled faintly of baby powder and determination. It was early morning, the Colorado air crisp with late autumn chill, and the sky hung low with clouds that looked heavy with promise. I held my head high despite damp palms and a heart that beat steady thunder in my ears. Emma walked beside me, her steps measured and confident. She wore a charcoal suit that didn't need to demand respect, it simply expected it. We passed reporters whose murmurs grew louder when someone whispered my name. There she is. That's Victoria from the parking lot video. That video. The one shared over 6 million times now. The one where I'd been abandoned in labor by a man who claimed to love me. The one the world couldn't stop watching. Inside, the courtroom was cooler than expected. Rows of wooden benches stretched behind us, mostly empty except for media representatives and quiet supporters. A woman 3 rows back made eye contact and gave the smallest nod. I didn't recognize her, but I recognized her expression. She knew this fight. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, flanked by a lawyer in an ill-fitting suit. His mother Linda perched on the bench behind him like her disapproval alone might influence the proceedings. Emma leaned toward me before we Saturday. Let them posture. They can't undo facts. Judge Martinez entered. We stood, then sat in unison. The clerk read case details in a crisp, emotionless voice, and then it began. Emma addressed the court with calm authority. Your Honor, my client endured sustained emotional, physical, and psychological abuse during a high-risk pregnancy. We will present authenticated video evidence, medical records, signed witness statements, and text communications from the defendant showing a pattern of coercive behavior spanning 2 years, culminating in life-threatening abandonment. Marcus's lawyer objected to various procedural points. Emma didn't blink. We take spousal abuse allegations seriously, Your Honor. The evidence speaks for itself. Then came the footage. Emma played the video without dramatics, just a screen showing me pleading by the car, Marcus's calculated cruelty, my body hitting pavement, his car disappearing into traffic. I didn't look away. Not this time. I watched it all with the same determination I'd carried every day since. Emma didn't stop there. She read his texts aloud. You're ruining my life. It's your fault for making me angry. You always make everything dramatic. Then came medical records, the paramedic statement, and written testimony from the stranger who'd knelt beside me that day and held my hand until help arrived. Marcus stood suddenly, face flushed. It wasn't like that. She's exaggerating everything. You don't know what she was like behind closed doors. My career is destroyed because... Judge Martinez held up her hand. Mr. Chen, this courtroom is not concerned with your employment. It is concerned with your conduct. Sit down. He did. The ruling came swift and decisive, full legal custody to me. Restraining order granted. Supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation. Emma closed her folder with a quiet click. Outside, as we walked down the courthouse steps, the crowd had grown. Reporters asked questions I didn't answer. Someone requested a selfie. I shook my head gently. Another voice called out, "What would you say to him now?" I paused, turned slightly toward the cameras. He said I'd ruin his life, I said, voice steady and clear. I didn't ruin anything. He did that to himself. The murmur stopped. Cameras clicked, but I kept walking. I didn't win because I screamed louder. I won because I finally refused to stay silent. Now, 3 months later, the quiet in my Denver apartment isn't the kind that haunted me before. It's not the echo of being ignored or the dread of footsteps on stairs. This is the kind that whispers comfort, the sound of my son's soft breathing while I stand at the kitchen counter, stirring oatmeal and planning our day. I've painted his nursery walls pale yellow. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming myself. I've started writing again, a blog for other women who need to know they're not alone. The comments pour in daily. I see you. I was you. Thank you for your courage. Marcus sends the occasional letter through his lawyer, asking to talk. I file them away without reading past the first line. I don't need his apology to heal. I don't need his pain to find peace. Some scars don't show, but they shape everything we become. My story isn't just about a broken marriage. It's about finding your voice after years of silence. It's about discovering that sometimes the life you build from ruins is stronger than anything you had before. I look at my son and whisper what I know now. They couldn't silence me, and they'll never silence you. We carry roots now, not just scars. The woman who was kicked out of that car doesn't exist anymore. In her place stands someone who knows her worth, someone who won't accept less than she deserves, someone who turned her breaking point into her breakthrough. And that woman? She's just getting started.